Welcome back into another Calibrated update. Today we are going to be talking about the ongoing events surrounding the U.S. attack on Venezuela and the capture of the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro. Before we do that, though, please, if you enjoy today's content and you are not subscribed, please consider clicking that subscribe button. If you are returning, you guys know that a like and a comment are the easiest way to support my channel and help me out, and I love to see your guys' comments. So please, if you wouldn't mind throwing one up there for me, I'd very much appreciate it. Welcome back in, everybody. We have had sort of a week off. I was out of town for a little bit, and I just have been extremely busy. So we're getting back into the flow of things. We got a lot planned for January, so stay on the lookout for videos. But today, what we are going to be talking about is the very recent U.S. operation against Venezuela, particularly against the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and his capture by U.S. Delta forces. I think it was on Friday night, Saturday morning. So first and foremost, I want to establish sort of what happened with this event. I had been talking about it for a long time. I thought some kinetic activity was going to happen against the Venezuelan government, military, or political apparatus in some means. You know, it's hard to tell with the United States, but the amount of staging that we were doing off of the coast of Venezuela in the Caribbean, the updating we were doing to air bases in the region, it all was pointing in a very specific direction and what was going to happen inside of Venezuela. Last Friday, Saturday morning, U.S. Delta forces went in on helicopters into Venezuela. They struck a few select targets. I think like one or two air defense systems were hit. A telecommunications tower was also struck. But outside of that, there was not a ton of damage done. Infrastructural damage, that sort of stuff, military damage. The Air Force is still intact. Most of their air defenses are still intact. Their military is intact, and their entire political leadership is intact, besides the acting president, Nicolas Maduro, who was captured while reportedly trying to flee from his house to a bunker facility. And in doing so, most of his personal protection were killed trying to defend him, or at least that is what the Venezuelan government is saying, the defense ministry. So take that as you will. It looks like the death toll from this operation came out to about 80 people. There were 0 U.S. casualties. And in fact, it appears to me, and this is just my opinion, it is still very early. We're still trying to figure out what actually happened in totality. But the film that we've seen, the videos that we've seen from this operation show American helicopters flying in very low, very slow, sort of like a, at the beginning of the Ukraine war, when the Russians did that helicopter operation to secure the Hostomel airport outside of Kiev. It was a similar sort of operation, except when the Russians went into Ukraine, the Ukrainians actually fought back. When the Americans went into Venezuela, there was basically 0 military response across the board. You could say that they did it very sneakily or whatever, but tensions are high, that everybody's paying attention and watching for what's coming. It would be very surprising to me that the Air Force didn't scramble immediately when their president was under attack. That is extremely suspicious to me. There was no reports of F-16s being shot down, which the Venezuelans do have. And there were not even reports of them being scrambled. There were no Venezuelan aircraft in the air pursuing the people who stole their president, kidnapped their president, if you will. And what this signals to me is that there has been an agreement in place for some time, whether that was an agreement between the government sort of throwing Maduro under the bus, or whether this was an agreement with the president himself between the U.S. and Venezuela. Importantly, I think what we should really be paying attention to, and I often say this, is when these events happen, if you want to know what the exact situation is, look at how they present the individual or the country or the regime or whatever the situation is. Look at how they're representing them. Look at how they're using them for propaganda. And what we're seeing in the United States right now is just this parade, this propaganda parade. Trump is sending Nicolas Maduro to the DEA to take pictures, either parading him around the streets of New York. They're doing this very public trial. It's all just very odd to me. It doesn't seem like something you would do with a terrorist. It seems like something you would do with like a celebrity that you captured from another country, right? It's not put him in a jail cell, he'll see his day in court, we'll hang him, whatever. It's more like, hey, look at this. Look at we did this so successfully. The American military is great. The Trump administration is great. Nothing's wrong. Meanwhile, you have the Epstein list and all of that stuff going on. So this is a very, very unique situation that has played out. It is a very interesting situation that has played out. And as it develops, we're going to learn more. I bet in 2 years, we'll have almost the full story. There will be some New York Times leak about how the vice president made an agreement with the U.S. military to not, attack them when they came in. I think of all the videos I've seen, I saw a single man pad be fired. And not even really at these helicopters. The helicopters were numerous and flying extremely low, almost within rifle range or machine gun range. You could throw a rock at them and basically take them down. It was something akin to Mogadishu in Somalia when the U.S. went in and, the Operation Black Hawk Down happened, or the operation that ended up becoming the Black Hawk Down movie and everything. That is more what you should expect from a helicopter insertion operation like this. Everybody just happened to be asleep. All of the pilots were not woken up. No planes were scrambled. And the president, the single most important person in this country, was just grabbed and snatched out of the country. So I think that there is a lot more at play behind the scenes. It is very suspicious. Logically, you should just look at this and be questioning it in its entirety. It's just very odd, especially considering that Maduro had offered to leave the presidency on his own after a certain transitional period. He had also offered, a bunch of different stuff to the United States, trying to make a deal the whole time. In my opinion, and this was my opinion before it happened, when I knew it was going to happen before it happened, I said that this is just another part of the overarching U.S. foreign policy directed towards global hegemony, right? Global domination. You can't have China becoming strong and also have all of these individual players taking up the free space and then dominating every aspect of, what the U.S. would consider our sphere of influence. We can't stand for that. So that's not going to happen. And this video is not just about Venezuela. This video is also going to be about what comes next, because Venezuela is just the start. I mean, Iran, I would say, was just the start. If you read the 2019 RAND papers, they discuss overextending Russia. The reason you overextend Russia is because you want to pull Russia away. You want to weaken Russia from a Russia-Chinese relationship where China has an energy-dependent partner that shares a border with it. You don't want that. And that's what the U.S. has now created with the Ukraine project. What comes after that? Well, you take out the lesser players on the table: Syria, Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iran, most importantly, in the Middle East. And then when you come over to the Western Hemisphere, you have a few players like Cuba, you have Venezuela. And then in particular, which I think this is a very, very important aspect that people are sort of missing, is Trump is still very openly talking about how the U.S. needs Greenland. We are snatching territory right now. That is what we are doing. We are changing regimes and we are taking territory. It will not just end with Venezuela. Next will be Iran. They're already talking about it. There are ongoing protests in Iran, which, they're saying are economic. I think that they're foreign backed in some way. The Israelis are very interested in what's going on in Iran right now. And they've been looking for an excuse for a couple of weeks, publicly at least, to once again go after Iran. They're saying that Iran's ballistic missile program has now exceeded what it was before the war. Iran has made adjustments to their ballistic missile program so that Israeli tactics with their F-35s and stuff will not be as effective against the ballistic missile launches. And the next time they attack Iran, Iran is going to attack them very, very hard. So there's a lot of moving parts right now in the Middle East that need to be focused on, but Venezuela should be the canary in the coal mine. This is going to happen all over the place. And particularly, like I said, in the Western Hemisphere, I believe that Cuba is going to be on that docket for some sort of internal regime change or external regime change, as we've just seen with the United States and Venezuela. There's also an aspect of this which is needs to be discussed, and that is the hypocrisy of this all. We've seen for some time that the U.S. is hypocritical, right? That's a very clear public thing that nobody can really deny. It's very obvious what's happening with international law and whatnot. But since Russia invaded Ukraine, there hasn't really been a particularly extravagant instance of the U.S. forcing regime change anywhere. You could say Syria, but Syria was a decades-long project, and the Syrian state was destroyed, and Bashar al-Assad was so weakened that it didn't even seem like the U.S. prompted it. It just kind of fell apart, right? So, I mean, you could say that was a U.S. regime change. They were involved. They are occupying the country, so on and so forth, but it was a much older project. It wasn't as successful, so on and so forth. It's still a problem as we speak. This Venezuela situation is different. The U.S. went in, they successfully extracted the president. He's going to be put on trial for whatever they want, narco terrorism, which again is just a made up term. There is no such thing as narco terrorism. And the point that I want to make with this is that the initial operations are always successful with the United States. They always are, right? The Iraq War, very successful right off the bat. Afghanistan, very successful right off the bat. We have no problem invading countries. We have no problem toppling regimes. That's not the issue here. That's not my issue with U.S. foreign policy and these regime change operations and these empire wars. My issue is not that we do it good, because we do. We actually do it very successfully. And usually we don't kill a ton of people when we do it. I know Iraq is a particular instance where a bunch of people died, but it's not, we usually have some kind of a standard. And I know that's going to sound weird, but this is just blatant. There's no good propaganda behind it. I mean, Trump is openly talking about how this is about controlling Venezuelan oil. They almost dropped the whole narco thing the second they captured him, because narco terrorism is not a real thing. And if you want to actually designate somebody as a narco terrorist, it would probably be Mexico, where way more drugs come into the United States from than Venezuela. So the whole narco terrorism thing is just a completely made up thing. And when you go in and you are regime changing after you've sat there for 4 years and talked about how what Russia is doing in Ukraine is wrong, and then you just go and do it right away, that's a problem, right? That's a major issue, and that makes you look incredibly bad. And what is that going to do on the global stage? Well, one, your arch nemesis, China, looks at that and goes, okay, now we have to start playing ball. We have to start doing different stuff. We have to change our approach because the U.S. is coming after us. They're coming after us hard. And this is what every country is going to be thinking. We're next. Like right now, Iran should be pursuing a nuke like nobody's business. They should get a nuke as soon as possible and test it immediately. Let the world know that if you attack Iran, you are going to get nuked. And then Iran won't get touched, just like North Korea. And then they won't be a boogeyman. They won't be a problem. They're not going to be our enemy anymore, just like North Korea isn't, right? Do you hear about North Korea being a big bag boogeyman in the propaganda? No, because they're not, and neither is Iran. But Iran is weak. Venezuela is weak. Cuba is weak. There are weak countries that the U.S. is going to go after. They're also going to go after Greenland. This is just openly stated in our policy papers. It's being openly stated by the Trump administration. The neocons are winning big right now in the short term. This is, and I made a tweet about this. We are great at winning initially. We're fantastic. I think we're the best in the world and nobody can compare. It's what comes after. It's having no plan to capitalize on that initial success. It's having the entire operation after that initial success completely blow up in your face. It happened in Iraq. It happened in Afghanistan. It happened in the Red Sea in Yemen. It happened all over the place, and it is going to happen again in Venezuela. And I'm just telling you now that in 5 years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, when we're having a refugee crisis or the cartels have completely taken over and we're dealing with a new ISIS-style threat down there or whatever, I'm just going to sit here and say this is exactly why I said we should not attack Venezuela. We should not go after them exclusively because we want their oil. We should not regime change a country because it sets a precedent for every other nation on the globe. All right, guys, that's it for me today on the Venezuela topic. Thank you so much for joining me. Stay tuned. I'm going to be doing videos almost every day this week. I got a map update. I got an interview coming up, and I have a lot planned for January. So thank you so much. Remember, comment, leave a like, and subscribe if you are not subscribed. Enjoy the week. If I see you sooner than the end of the week, I will tell you to enjoy your weekend. But if I don't, enjoy your weekend, everybody. Goodbye.